Hi, my name is Callie Chappelle, and thanks for watching this video about topicality. This is part one of a three-part series regarding topicality, which is a subsection of my Go Fight Win Novice Debate series, a series of videos aimed at teaching novice debaters how to do policy debate. So let's get started. My name is Callie Chappelle, and I'm a debater for the University of Michigan. In high school, I debated for Traverse City Central, and I am a second negative first affirmative speaker. Fun fact about me is that I believe that breadth is greater than depth any day. You'll learn all about what this means after watching this series of videos. Alright, so welcome. So how do you make the most out of these videos? You should do two things. First, you should take notes, and second, you should rewatch bits that you need re-explained. Hopefully we'll have worksheets and or supplemental materials that will go along with the video, so check out the video description to see if I posted those. Next, you don't need to memorize at all. What we want you to be is at least familiar with everything in the video because it's a building process. And finally, your coach may like things differently, or you may like to debate in a different style. Some people don't even like debating topicality with their style of debate. That's totally okay. This is just one starting point and not an end point. But regardless of the type of debate that you do, you should at least be familiar with what topicality is, because I'm sure you'll hear it at least one time in your debate career. Alright, so what is the resolution again? It is this. Resolved. The United States federal government should substantially increase its non-military exploration and or development of the Earth's oceans. Understanding the resolution and understanding what the resolution describes is an integral part of being able to debate topicality well. Alright, so what is a or the plan text? Okay, so think about it. See, I'm referring to the aquaculture plan text, so do you know that one? Alright, so a plan text is a statement of what the AF does. So here's an example of a plan text that is the aquaculture AF that I'm using as the example AF in this series of videos. So, the United States Congress should substantially increase development of offshore integrated multi-trophic aquaculture in the United States exclusive economic zone through financial incentives and permits regulated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, or NOAA. Okay, so this is what a plan text looks like, and then it is just a statement of what an AF does. This plan text is like a little bit complicated, but that's totally okay. I just wanted you to be familiar with what a plan text sounds like. Okay, so what does topical mean in a non-debate sense? Well, I went to Merriam-Webster's and I looked this up. Topical, adjective, of immediate relevance, interest, or importance owing its relation to current events. So topicality answers the question, is the AF relevant to debate under the resolution, or is the AF an example of the resolution? So the question is the AF of immediate relevance, like it says here, of the resolution, which is increasing, the USFG increasing exploration and or development non-militarily of the Earth's oceans. Alright, so what is topicality, or T? Well, it says that the AF has to be an example of the resolution. Therefore, every word in the plan text needs to fit under the resolution. So, if the resolution says the United States federal government should, then the AF must be done through the USFG, or the United States federal government. If the resolution says exploration and or development, the AF must prove that their action is an example of exploration and or development. If part of the AF doesn't fit under the resolution, then they can argue that the AF is not topical. Okay? So, like, let's say that the AF had China do it instead of having the United States do it. Then they could argue that even though they increase exploration and or development of the Earth's oceans non-militarily, the fact that it's not the USFG doing it means that the AF is not topical and is not an example of the entire resolution. So, what is the purpose of topicality? Well, let's think about what a world would look like without topicality. So this is a world where the AF team could read any plan, regardless of whether it was related to the resolution, and the neg team had to respond to it. So how would neg teams prepare for crazy, unpredictable AFs? Would neg teams even want to debate? So the reason why topicality is so important to have as a debate argument is to provide a check for the types of affirmatives that we allow on the topic. So, like, let's say that you're debating your neg and you're getting ready to debate a team that reads an AF that's all about why we should increase rockets to space. Has nothing to do with oceans. Absolutely nothing. Well, it would be really hard for you to prepare because you've done a lot of research about oceans and you've done very little research probably about, like, space exploration. So it would prevent you from reading kind of your best strategies because it's not something that you're as you're familiar with. So it's important to have arguments that allow us to narrow down the topic or just define what the topic is and is not to be able to prepare for debates and then have better debates. Alright, so in a world that we just described, the neg would always be at an unfair disadvantage because debates would be less educational Because if you had to research everything when you're neg, then most people would just end up researching nothing. If it could be about any topic whatsoever and you had to refute it, then it would be really hard to research. Or people would never be able to say specific things about each individual AF, so you just default to things that apply to everything, and then you never learn about the topic. So there's a reason why we have a topic that changes every year, because we want to learn about different topics every year. If we don't learn about that topic, then debate is less educational overall. So which side is favored in each version of this resolution? So think about the AFs that would be allowed under each resolution, okay? And what AFs you could run. And tell me if you think that the AF side is favored or if the neg side is favored. So let's look at the first one. Resolved. The USFG should increase exploration and or development. So if the resolution is really big and allows for lots of AFs, then it favors the AF side. But if the resolution is really small and it means that less AFs can be run that would fit under that resolution, then it means that it favors the neg side. So resolve. So this one, well, if you increase any kind of exploration and or development, exploration of the mind, exploration of space, exploration of the Amazon rainforest, well, it sounds to me like that would favor the AF because there are so many different AFs that would be topical under that resolution. So let's check out the second one. The USFG should substantially increase its development of the Earth's oceans in the form of aquaculture. Well, that's really specific, right? Because the only AF that would be topical is ones that increase aquaculture, which is a pretty small subsection of overall ocean research. So I would say that this one favors the negative because it would be very easy for the negative to prepare all the arguments against aquaculture because it's very small. And finally, resolved. The USFG should substantially increase its non-military exploration and or development of the Earth's oceans. Well, this one sounds just right. I don't know on face whether the AF or the neg side is favored. So that's why we have topicality, right? To define whether the examples of the resolution that the AF is giving does fit under the resolution. So the purpose of topicality is to have a resolution that's broad enough to give affirmative teams many AF plans they can choose from and be able to read, but also narrow enough for neg teams to be able to anticipate and prepare for any AF argument. So examples of AFs on this topic include increasing aquaculture, increasing offshore wind. There are lots of examples of potential AFs that you can check out on the High School Debate Wiki or also on the NDCA Open Evidence Project. So in debate, on debate teams, the goal, or like in debate rounds, the goal of topicality is to create a predictable limit on the topic. So let's break it down. Predictable and limit. So predictable means that both teams have to be able to accurately guess what is allowed so we can prepare things beforehand that are about the topic. So, for example, would an AF about increasing the U.S.-Japanese dolphin support group be predictable? No, because it's like such a random, minute part of the topic, if it's even topical at all, that it would be really hard to prepare things. Like, if you didn't know this AF existed, to just be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're reading U.S.-Japan Dolphin Support Group AF, and you're just like, I have nothing to say against that, because I don't even know what that is. Okay, the second part is limits. So we need a constraint on what can be argued, so we can have a reasonable amount to research. So if exploration was defined as anything that increases one person's knowledge, how much would you have to research? So much, because there's so many things we could do involving the ocean that would increase that could potentially increase one person's knowledge. However, if we have a definition of exploration that is a little bit less encompassing and is more specific, then that'll provide a greater limit on the topic, which will limit down or decrease the number of potential AFs that would fit under that definition. Alright, so how do you know what the line is of what is topical and what is not topical? Well, you get to draw that line. That's the reason why we read topicality. So how do you do that? You run topicality. You run the topicality argument, okay? So now we already have an idea of the general idea of topicality. It's a strategy we use to limit the number and types of AFs, but also allow certain AFs in the topic to be able to create a topic that's just right for the AF and neg. But so how do we go about doing that? Well, how do we know the plan is topical? Well, some words in the resolution are obvious, like the United States federal government. Obviously, having Japan increase ocean exploration would not be topical. But what is exploration? And what is development? Or what even does substantial mean? To the common person, we all have different intuitions about what these words mean. So to sort out these issues, we use definitions of the words in the resolution, and then we debate about the merits of those definitions in two ways. First, whether the definition is very credible and is a definition that we should use because of its relative merits, but also we should talk about how what the world of debate would look like if we adopted that definition. All right, so where do these definitions come from? Well, they come from a lot of different places. Here are just some examples. One is general dictionaries, like Merriam-Webster. Another is special dictionaries, like law dictionaries, like Black's Law Dictionary. Another is legislation. So at the end or beginning of most policies, Congress people define most terms of the document, so we can use those definitions in topicality debates. Also, contextual use of the word. So here's an example. Here's an example with economic engagement from last year, but they might talk about what economic engagement or what exploration or what ocean development or what non-military is in context when they're like describing that term in a paper, and then you can use that contextual use as your definition. And finally, expert opinion. So it might just be Joe Schmo, PhD in oceans, says, I define non-military to be, and then this, and then he defines it, or she defines it. But wait, you can find a definition to include or exclude almost anything, especially with the internet. Well, when topicality is at a debate, the AF team will always have a definition that includes their AF, and the neg team will always have a definition that excludes the AF. So yeah, you will always find a definition that can include and exclude anything. But how do you decide what is better? Well, you debate about it. You debate about it in a very specific way through topicality, which I will describe to you very soon. So let's continue talking about what makes a good definition, though. So, like I said, how do you decide which definition is better? Well, you first talk about the merits of the source in which you derive the definition, but then you also talk about what the debate space would look like with that definition. So let's talk about what makes a good definition regarding the merits of the source itself. So here are some ways in which you can say your source is better or worse. First is intent to define. So that's saying that the author is trying to define a word and not just casually using the word in passing. Next is a recency. So obviously a definition of cell phones in 2013 or 2014 is very different than a definition of cell phones from 1980. Next is qualifications. Obviously Wikipedia is a lot less qualified of a source than someone who has a PhD in oceans. Next is supported by consensus of experts, not a fringe opinion. So if you have a card, this is not necessarily related to topicality always, but like, for example, the global warming debate. The debate that global warming is happening now is supported by consensus of experts, whereas the idea that there's no warming is only a kind of a fringe idea. Next is it uses multiple words in the resolution. So a definition that includes economic engagement versus just engagement is better. So a definition that includes non-military exploration is better than a definition that just includes exploration. Alright, and finally is precision. And that's like saying exploration is discovery through discipline, diverse observations, and the recording of the findings, versus exploration is just learning new things. Having a more precise definition is always better because it allows you to, well, you'll learn about this more, but it allows you to garner a lot of the offense from the other team's definition. But you'll understand what that means later as we talk about it. So this sounds really weird. Well, yeah, T is a qualitatively different sort of argument than a DA or a counterpoint. In fact, T is considered a different type of argument altogether. It's considered what's called a procedural argument. So this means two things. First, if the AF loses topicality, they lose the round regardless of whether they win their AF impacts outweigh, or whether the AF solves, or whether they outweigh the disad. You have to answer T. You have to win T to be able to, for the judge to evaluate the rest of the debate. And second, the neg doesn't have to kick out of T. They can just no longer bring it up and they haven't dropped it. So the AF is never going to win, but the neg dropped T, therefore they win the round. The neg can just choose to stop talking about T anytime in the debate and not have to kick out of it. So generally, it's considered that T is evaluated before theory arguments like conditionality, although that's debatable. So for example, if you are AF and you are losing the topicality debate, but you're winning the conditionality debate, most judges think that they will evaluate the topicality debate before the conditionality, therefore you would lose the debate in a round where you lose T, but you win condo. However, you can definitely argue about this. I've definitely heard of rounds where the team who goes for conditionality, the AF team going for conditionality, actually beats topicality, and they give reasons why conditionality is worse than not being topical. So that's a debatable question, but that's just another thing. So this is the end of the slideshow. This is just part one. Coming up next time, we're going to talk about how you actually debate T in a round. And then the third part of the video is more advanced topicality strategies and how to get good at understanding different standards in topicality, and also how to just be good at debating topicality in general. So hopefully you'll join me for the next two videos, and I hope to see you then. Thanks!